All right, let's do this. Hey, welcome to my workspace. This is the place I work at. So I'm here at my desk. I'm looking at my laptop. I have my monitors here, my super clicky keyboard, and this is where I perform my work. So during the day, I do my job as a tester. I write test automation, I talk to people on Zoom, I click through pages and I test things, I write down notes, I perform to my best abilities as a tester. During the night, however, I spend my time a little differently. I am a developer. I work on my homepage, I create and enhance the applications that I test on my workshops, and I deal with all the developer stuff like bundlers and frameworks and CSS and databases, APIs, and so on, you name it. So basically, I spend a lot of time on both tester and developer chair. And this got me thinking, what's going on with these two groups of people? So I don't know how about you, but I feel like testers and developers seem to be constantly living in this weird zone between being friends and being arch enemies, like frenemies or something. Chances are that your workplace is leaning to the latter. But why is that? We have the same goal, we have the same challenges, we have the same clients, same product owner, we have the same boss, and sometimes we even use the same tools. Testers and developers have different perspectives. They go deep into the area of their expertise and dive deeper and deeper into a set of problems that they try to solve. So me personally, as a tester, I try to think about the system as a whole. I try to think about all the different inputs and outputs and risks. I think about all the things that could happen and all the different contexts in which the software that I'm testing is going to be used. And as a developer, I think about all that a little bit less. I need to architect different parts of the application, make sure components work well together. I think about all the design decisions. I need to work out the structure and the logic of various functions and objects and do all of that to the best of my abilities so that the software will be according to the requirements. So living in both of these worlds at the same time got me thinking, why have these two roles fallen apart so much? That has led me to another question. Can testing be done by a developer? Can development be done by testing? Well, of course, both require a skill, but it can be done. And I personally would argue that they are closer to each other than we usually think. So for example, when a developer writes a web application and then decides to run it in their browser, did they stop being developer for that moment? Should they report their work as a non-technical work, non-developing work? Of course not. The process of examining the application, trying it out, or testing, that's all development. And vice versa. When, as a tester, you examine an application and then design a script that will perform a series of automated checks, have you abandoned testing and gone straight into development? Suddenly, are you not a tester? Well, of course not. These worlds are very much connected, and yet they often seem so far apart. We split testers and developers into separate groups, into separate teams, sometimes even separate buildings or separate companies. Well, I say we need to stop this and get back together, and there are many reasons for this. Developers have come up with some amazing ideas on how to deliver great software, on how to work as a team and how to help each other grow. Testers have done the same. They have come up with ways of how to do their job really well and work as a team and help each other grow. I think it's time to share that knowledge between testers and developers. I think this could really be the case of where 1 + 1 = 3. So I prepared a couple of tips of how I think we can help each other out and how you can improve your workflow as a developer and as a tester. So let's start with the first and most obvious thing you can do as a tester. Understand the code. It's pretty obvious that developers understand the code that they are writing. The big question is, should testers understand it as well? Well, My answer is yes. Obviously, there's no need for testers to get at the level of a senior CTO, but black box testing is no longer efficient as a tester. It's just not going to get you there. There's no need for you to be able to spot an error in code. That would make you a better developer, but not a better tester. But the technical knowledge has the potential to make you a better tester. The more you know about the building blocks of your app, the better for you. Let's say you have found an error in an application like this. Say you have a login screen, and there's an error. So is it an error on front end? Is it a backend error? Once developer fixes it, what are you going to focus on? With the black box approach, you can run your 53 test cases after developer deploys a fix and spend a couple of hours of retesting your whole login flow. Even then, you might find out that the deploy was unsuccessful and you have been testing the wrong version of application. So yeah, that's a nightmare. But once you get a better understanding of what's going on in your app, you might, for example, find out that there was an error on the front end and you had a typo in your API URL. That will make you much more efficient. So yeah, understanding the basic code blocks of what your code is doing is going to help you become a much efficient tester. So let's now switch to development. So as a developer, you should consider flakiness. Flakiness is something that's being talked about with testers. And that's because flakiness is mostly considered being a thing of a test automation. It makes sense. Flakiness happens when we want to run an automated check and we get uncertain results. Sometimes the test will pass, sometimes it will fail. For this reason, it has somehow happened that the term flakiness is connected to testing. But I have to say, that kind of connection is not really a fair one. Flakiness can come from many sources. You can have a flaky test, yes. But you can also have a flaky server, especially when we are talking about staging or QA areas that usually don't have as much power as the production server. And if you are a front-end developer, you probably know that you can have a flaky app. So imagine a following scenario. We have an application that will trigger a bunch of API requests when it is being loaded. Resource 1, 2, and 3. And there's a loader animation that will disappear when resource 1, 2, and 3 are done with loading. In our test automation, we wait for the application to load all resources, and once the automation is done, we do our first test step. Now let's imagine a following scenario. We're going to refactor our application and we are going to add a resource number 4. But we'll forget something. We will forget to bind that resource number 4 to the loader animation. So now the loader animation will no longer wait for all of the resources, just resource numbered 1, 2, and 3. And suddenly we might have a flaky test by no fault of the test itself. The application has become flaky because the loader does not behave properly. Same problem goes for inputs and its validators, buttons being disabled or enabled, or any other conditional logic in our application. With the given example, it might seem like this error is just a minor code smell or a small inconvenience. But this problem can manifest much intensively if a user has a slower connection, or as demonstrated, if we interact with the app using a test automation. This is the main reason why we need to think about flakiness not only within the context of a test automation, but also in context of the source code as well. Making the application itself stable opens the door to a good test automation. And it enables our users with slower connections or lower CPUs to have a good user experience. So yeah, even if you are a developer, don't forget about flakiness. Let's go back to testing now. Treat your test automation as development. I've seen test automation code being treated as a sort of second-class citizen, as if test automation code is something less than the application code. And yes, our clients use the product that our developers create, but that does not make the test automation any less important. So in a recent LinkedIn post, I asked people, where do you put your test automation code? Does it live inside the source code repository, or does it live somewhere else completely? I was surprised to find out that almost half of the responses said that the test automation code lives in a separate repository. This sort of brings me to a point I was making earlier. We have split development and testing into different areas. But really, they are part of the same process, and they should be treated as such. They should be close to one another. And that's because... Sorry, let me write this one down, because it's really important. Test automation is development. Yeah, and you should start treating it as such. You are both developer and a tester. So don't be okay with your code sitting somewhere else, being treated as a second-class citizen. That doesn't mean it has to be in the same repository, but it can be treated as a very important piece of the whole source code in your company. And also, don't be afraid to take your code to that level. Go ahead and apply the best practices that developers do. Use ESLint or Prettier to create code formatting standards. Do peer reviews with both developers and testers, invite them in. And improve the quality of your code. Make your test automation a whole team effort. Make it count. Do pair programming session. Read your colleagues' code. Suggest improvements. You can create quality checklists that only the highest quality code will make it into production. It's really good and it's going to improve your whole team. This is what developers do. It's time that we as testers apply it as well. Also, with modern tools like Cypress, you can create a custom library of your own custom commands and make the library autocomplete in your code editor with TypeScript. You can annotate it with JSDoc, creating a self-documenting code base. You can prioritize with your team which test automation efforts should be given more attention and which should be prioritized. And of course, go ahead and celebrate big wins. If you deliver a big project, treat yourself. You deserve it. Alright, now back to development. As a developer, focus on users. My friend Andy talked about shifting left and shifting right. He had this amazing talk about 8 software testing convictions. If you haven't seen the talk or read the blog, automationpanda.com, you're seriously missing out. Go ahead and give it a read. In his talk, he mentioned shifting both left and right. Shifting left is a popular idea for making sure to start a test automation process early and implementing practices that help with delivering high-quality software early on in the development process. You can either start testing an incomplete feature, write a unit test, perform test-driven development, and so on and so forth. Shifting right is making sure that you don't lose sight of what is happening once we ship a new feature. And testers are well aware of this world. They are going through bug reports, assessing severity, finding out how many people were affected by a defect in the app, and they really feel the pain of users. When working in software development, one can get easily overwhelmed by all the engineering work that goes into delivering quality software. It can easily happen that while being focused on the best engineering decision, you lose focus on what the real user using the software actually goes through. In my previous job, we have come up with a system on how to easily classify bugs. This would help us immensely understanding what is going on with our users. We would have two dimensions. One would be quality and the other one would be quantity. These two dimensions would divide bugs into 4 quadrants. So whenever we found a bug, we would place it into one of these 4 categories. For example, type A bug would be an incident. So for example, payment does not work. In that case, we would drop everything and try to fix it as soon as possible. B type of bug would have a high impact, but it wouldn't affect that many users. This would mean we would need to fix it as soon as possible, so we don't lose trust of our customers. But it wouldn't have the same urgency as an A-type incident. With a C-type, that would be your most common bug. Something that would affect a lot of people, but would not have as much of an impact. Of course, these also need to get fixed, but in case there are some more severe bugs, this would be a good compass on what to focus on and what to leave for later. With the D-type, these would be defects that would not have a big impact and would not affect many people. Oftentimes, these would be just bugs found by a tester perfectionism. This would be a really strong candidates for leaving them just as they are. I know this idea doesn't sit well with everyone, but if you have a big competition and you need to deliver value to your customers as fast as possible, you need to choose your battles. Sometimes these type of bugs would not get fixed at all, but we would still be able to deliver a good quality to our customers. This type of classification would be something that everyone in the company would be able to understand, and it would help shed light into current issues. No matter if you were a CEO or you worked at a helpline, if you were a tester or an engineer, this common metric could keep us all focused on the right thing. This very simple model had another benefit. Everyone would understand what testers actually do. And it helped keeping focus on shifting right, focusing on people. Because let's face it, users don't really care about how nice our framework is or how fast our test automation executes. They care about a working product. And we testers know this. It's kind of the point of our job, to help deliver the quality to our users. We as testers can be the kind reminder for our developer friends to always think about the end user. And reminding the whole company about this and making sure that quality is everyone's responsibility. Let's go back to testing now. As a tester, don't repeat yourself. So you are probably well familiar with this principle. Try, don't repeat yourself. It is a good principle to start with, but of course, as everything, it can be overdone. Senior developers know how to make good design decisions that make the code maintainable and easy to read. As testers, we are also responsible for our test code, and we should think like those senior developers as well. We need to make design decisions that make the code maintainable and easy to read. Now, dry principle sometimes serves this goal well, but there's actually more to that than not writing the same function twice. Test automation code has a lot of specifics. Instead of being used by users, it's being used as a part of our development process. This means it can be a part of pipeline or a nightly build or some other test automation effort. It also means that we need to apply the dry principle not only to the code creation, but the code execution as well. So we need to make smart decisions on which tests to execute. Maybe we should not execute all of the tests at once, but we can select a subset of tests to test that. For example, in Cypress, you can tag your tests and then grab them to only run those that need to be run at a current stage of development. So for example, you want to do just the basic checks on your pull request, But maybe you want to run the full test automation before your release. Another killer feature that can be used to improve your testing is code coverage. This is a way of telling how much of your code is covered during your test execution. It has been mostly known by being used with unit tests, but with Cypress you can actually do this with end-to-end tests as well. Now, code coverage of course gets a bad reputation. This is sometimes because some people look at the percentage of how much code is covered as a key metric. That should never be the case. Instead, code coverage can reveal what parts of your code are being over-tested and which parts of your code have not been tested at all. This can help you reveal blind spots in your tests, and you can treat it as a map. It can be a huge help for writing your tests in a more optimal way, not repeating yourself in test execution. Also, you can be really smart with your test execution. If you are testing an app that needs a login, instead of using UI over and over again, you can use API, or even better, you can use UI but only once. I've mentioned Cypress in this presentation. There's this really cool CY session command that can make a snapshot of your browser state after a login. So instead of figuring out your login programmatically or doing the UI login over and over again, you can just log in once and you are done. It's amazing. And this is something that can really improve your test efficiency. And you don't repeat yourself over and over again during test execution. You just log in once and you're good to go. Alright, let's shift focus back on development. Work on testability. I'm going to circle back on the idea of shifting left. Testing should start early, but we need to make sure that the testing is actually something that can be done. Maybe as a tester you have been in situations where suddenly all of your tests failed. You try to investigate, see what happens, what has actually caused the error. And suddenly, bam! Developers introduce CAPTCHA to your app. And now all your tests are good as none. Things like this should not happen. Testing should never be an afterthought. Testing is a strategy. Putting measures in that make sure that your application is testable will help you as a developer. Think about testing. Think about it in advance. Make sure you plan your testing as a part of development strategy. For example, you can add a switch that can turn off rate limiting for test environments. You can, as a developer, program a tool that can help your test automation scripts with logging. You can also help your team test in a way that will make sure that your code is properly tested. Making sure your application not only works, but is testable will help you in the long run. Share what you've learned. Make sure that whether you are a tester or a developer, you share what you have learned with your team. There are so many good things we can do together. For example, when a big incident happens. No one likes that, of course. But what you can do is to organize a blameless post-mortem meeting. You can analyze the impact and cooperate to create a prevention measure. You can share your code and brainstorm together. Don't be afraid to invite someone to the meeting just because you think it might get too technical. Your company can become a great environment where you can help each other grow. But most important of all, be nice to each other. Thank you. My name is Filip Hric. You can check out what I do at philiphric.com. Feel free to follow me on Twitter or on LinkedIn, or you can check out my page, and I'll give you some time to scan those QR codes, maybe visit the page, and yeah, I'll be looking forward to your Q&A, to your questions, and I'll be happy to provide you with answers. So yeah, see you around and hopefully next time. Bye-bye.
There, and I think Filip is back and live.
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Looks like that. I don't know what happened. Sorry. I guess I was speechless after my speech.
Oh, yeah. Great session, Filip. I thought we'd hurry up and get through some. Maybe I'll do a lightning round of questions while we have you. I know you're busy as well. I guess the first upvoted question is, how do we test APIs with Cypress?
You can do that very nicely. There's, if you're familiar with Cypress syntax, you know how easy it is. It's just cy and then the name of the command. So get for like getting an element, click on like clicking on an element. There's a cy request you can use to send an HTTP request and then just make assertions on it. But I actually have made a plugin. I'm just putting that in the chat. That sort of enhances this experience because you'll get this nice UI where you can examine request and response. And yeah, if I can do a little bit of self promo, I am preparing an API testing in Cypress course. Will be released on my page hopefully during the summer, but not sure about that. But you can watch for that.
So, Filip, just another plug there. One of the other top questions was, how could I learn more about advanced courses on Cypress? I know you are the go-to person I usually go to for Cypress, but once again, do you have any other courses or any other resources you would recommend?
Well, of course, the number one resource I can recommend is Test Automation University. It's the best one because it's free. And there's a course on Cypress Basics and Advanced Cypress. I'm the author of the Advanced Cypress, but we are planning a update of these two courses because Cypress has made some bigger updates recently. So we'll update those to be up to date, and you can look out for that one during the summer as well.
Very nice. So, Pick, I don't want to talk all over you. If you have a question that's resonating with you, let me know.
I was trying to grab the link for Test Automation University, but I want to note that Patrice dropped it in the chat, so you have access to that.
Awesome. So I guess the next question we have for you, Filip, is you talked about code coverage, and this, oh gosh, I see a lot of people get in trouble with code coverage, but they want for Cypress. Is there a good plugin you recommend or a good resource for that?
Oh yeah, there is a plugin for code coverage. I think it was mentioned in the chat a bunch of times. But if you want to get into the code coverage, I do have a blog where I explain how that works, and you can also check out a video by Cypress on their YouTube channel about code coverage. It was done by Gleb Bahmuteu and Amir. And they have really explained that very well, how that works. So I suggest you check that out.
All right. Any thoughts on ChatGPT and Cypress and how they can integrate with one another?
It's a great sidekick. Like recently I was dealing with some dates and some parsing of the data. I wanted to use complicated loops and Lodash and whatnot. Regular expressions. I can insert human language prompt to ChatGPT and it can give me the code, which I would probably take a little longer to figure out, maybe half a day or something. So like those complicated things which you would Google anyways, you can just use with ChatGPT. That has been really working well for me, at least.
Awesome. I think we need to wrap it up soon, Filip, but one last question. I know one thing I always see with Cypress is everyone's always asking about authentication. That was the next one up. I don't know if you have enough time, but could you mock authentication in Cypress?
Well, you can. There's a very great mocking command, intercept. It can just take the whole network layer and do anything in there. But when we are talking about authentication, what you might end up doing is, I actually mentioned that in the talk, the CY session, which can sort of help you to log in just once. And you can do that through UI. You don't need to like do complicated API stuff. You don't even need to understand very much how that authentication works. But if you just click through that and cache everything that was in the browser, so like cookies and local storage and stuff like that, that will help you with authentication as well. Of course, we could spend on authentication quite a long time because it's a rich topic. There are many different ways. So it always will be the complicated one. That's why there's no single answer. But I really recommend checking out CY Session API. It's really useful when you are dealing with this.
You did mention getting developers and testers on the same page and making sure developers kind of share their knowledge. How is that done? Is it a cultural thing, or like any tips on how you can really integrate both of them together?
Yeah. So to answer your question, I think it is a cultural thing, but at the end of the day, we are the ones that are building the culture. It's built by people. So I think it's sort of the little things, right? Build empathy to your fellow developers if you're a tester. If you're a developer, try to do a shadowing session to build empathy towards your tester colleagues. So I think if we just find our common goals and work together, it will build over time. So I do agree it's a cultural thing, but it's important to build that culture because we're spending quite a lot of time of our day in work, right? So if that environment is a friendly place, it's a place where we like to be, right? If it's not, we just take the paycheck and, and leave. Maybe look for the next opportunity, and that's kind of a waste of your life, right? So yeah.
That's great advice. For some reason, in my experience, it always seems like people want to have a tech solution, but a lot of times it just boils down to culture, and that's one of the hottest things to sell for sure.
Yeah.
So, Philip, another question that's popping up to me is: there's a such thing as over testing in development.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that could be like, and I think that was kind of the point I was trying to make with the don't repeat yourself for testers, because we can easily start repeating ourselves with like the test execution. If we have 100 tests and we log in through UI 100 times, we are repeating ourselves and we are over testing that part of our application, essentially not being very efficient with our testing. So that's what I would call over testing, or maybe call an example of over testing. So I do agree that it is a thing.
Very nice. So someone's asking about flakiness. Do you see the same type of flakiness in headless versus UI headed type of browsers?
Yeah, I think there is there are slight differences. I have definitely experienced those using Cypress. The main difference usually is the difference in speed. Like sometimes when we work on our computers using the UI, our test runs a little bit slower, right? And some of the errors we make in our test design will not manifest until we run it on the pipeline. So this is a learning opportunity, right? To find what's going on, understand what's actually happening inside the application, and basically bringing ourselves as testers closer to the code and get a better understanding of what's happening. Because that way we can write a more robust test that will not be as flaky. That's my 5 cents to that topic.
Awesome session, Philip. Great time. Awesome keynote. Really appreciate it. Really love your style. I thought I was the only one that likes smooth jazz, so I'm glad I'm not the only one. So thanks again for participating.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And while we're